Across 3 sessions of playing with AI-generated images for imaginary railway landscapes, I encountered a variety of sights, ranging from images so absurd they made me laugh in disbelief to those so impressive they left me in awe. The service I used employed Google's image generation model, Imagen 3, and naturally, the images it produced had similar qualities. Curious about what kind of imaginative images other services might create, I decided to try out some options that are easy for amateurs to use. I excluded services that required tedious prompts, asked for extensive training sessions with the AI, or, of course, demanded a hefty donation. However, I made a special exception for Stable Diffusion. It's like a medium that facilitates the descent of various AIs into my workspace. While slightly troublesome to manage, it doesn't require donations and isn't bound by the convoluted formalities of the cloud-based realm, which is why I included it. So, I standardized the prompts to see what each AI could conjure up. Since all the AIs are foreign-born, I decided to cast my prompts in English to eliminate disparities in Japanese language comprehension. Here is the first spell, Japan in the 1980s. At the peak of its economic boom, the crowded streets of a big city are bustling with trains passing by, surrounded by throngs of people and cars. When input into the usual image FX, the result looked like this. The atmosphere was crowded, capturing the mood of the transitional period from the Showa to Heisei era. The style was calm and exuded a nice ambience. Next, I tried the spell on Grok, recently praised for its intelligence. While it imposes limits on image generation without a donation and places conspicuous watermarks on the images, it has a reputation for high-quality output. However, the result was a bit disappointing. While tracks were generated, the focus was on people and cars, and no railway vehicles were visible. The disregard for the no trespassing on the tracks rule was evident, with cars and people casually entering the rails. Lastly, I tested Microsoft's Designer. The scene was rendered with considerable depth, showing the railway elevated and separated from the roads, although there were depictions of trains running directly on the road. Additionally, for some reason, a single woman was prominently depicted, floating as if suspended. Next, we have Stable Diffusion. The AI invoked was Flux 1. Perhaps due to its British origins, the vehicles and train cars were not particularly Japanese in design, but the AI seemed to have interpreted the prompt quite accurately. Among the AIs that struggle with rendering Japanese text on signage, this one produced a relatively convincing result. Moreover, due to its flexible resolution settings, while other AIs barely achieve usable Full HD images without donations, Flux 1 produced images of such remarkable detail that they could withstand being used in 4K video slideshows, putting others to shame. However, there was a train depicted as if entering the road like a streetcar, but surprisingly, its wheels were rubber tires, effectively making it a trolleybus. Now, let's cast the next spell, starting with Image FX, scenery of a Japanese coastline. Waves lap against the rocky shore in the warm spring breeze, and beyond that, an orange, angular commuter train with 8 cars runs along the tracks. In the distance, a skyline of high-rise buildings is visible through the spring haze, and Mount Fuji, crowned with snow at its peak, can also be seen. Although it did not render an 8-car train as described, the scene it produced was faithful to the prompt, which was quite impressive. Next is Grok. It focused on an angle centered around the coastline bathed in the setting sun. Judging from the description of Mount Fuji's snowy peak, the AI seemed to interpret it as early spring, and even added scenes of cherry blossoms in bloom. Lastly, Microsoft Designer. Its artistic style changed significantly, depicting not only spring haze but also the spray from high waves drifting mistily along the coast. There were even scenes where waves engulfed the railway tracks, giving the impression of the wild gusts of a spring storm. The train's formation, far exceeding 8 cars, was bizarrely long, resembling a freight train of unusual length. As for Flux 1, aside from the train cars, the scenery reflected the calmness of springtime in Japan. However, the cherry blossoms were a deep pink, quite unlike the iconic Summa Yoshino variety. Now for the next spell. A wide lake surface with crystal clear water reflects the image of Japan's mainline railway in the 1950s. On the tracks, a large steam locomotive hauls vintage grape-colored passenger coaches. The train stretches in a long formation, with the locomotive emphasizing its power by releasing thick smoke and steam. In the distance, snow-capped mountains glow in the setting sun. At the foot of the mountains, a peaceful rural village dotted with thatched roof farmhouses spreads out. With Image FX. The rendering was incredibly natural, but remnants of the previous spell persisted, and the background mountains ended up as Mount Fuji. The train was reasonably depicted, and the expressions of smoke and steam were, as always, impressive. The depiction included houses resembling the thatched roof homes seen in Hidetakayama, indicating the AI had heeded the prompt to a fair extent. However, the long formation aspect of the spell wasn't captured, resulting in a more local train-like appearance. Despite that, elements like headmarks added AI's distinct creativity, beyond the grasp of mere mortals. Some images even showed faint smoke rising from Mount Fuji, leading one to wonder if it was predicting an eruption. Next is Grok. The locomotive appeared somewhat Japanese, and the background had a calm artistic style. The depiction of smoke was outstanding, and the soft glow of the locomotive's headlamp captured the atmosphere of the steam era remarkably well. However, the water reached the ballast, creating tracks that seemed precarious for running trains. It also appeared that Grok was unfamiliar with the thatched roof farmhouses of Japan. Here, the passenger cars took center stage, looking older yet distinctly European. The tracks seemed on the verge of submerging, as though inspired by a movie. Interestingly, one image included a structure reminiscent of a Japanese thatched roof farmhouse, showing the unpredictability of the AI's interpretations. Next, Microsoft's Designer. Its unique color tones and emphasis on the lake's transparency added a different flair, but the thatched roof houses were ignored, perhaps indicating the AI lacked training in traditional Japanese landscapes. Additionally, there were frequent derailments, suggesting limited knowledge about railway systems. The depiction of smoke often felt unnatural, indicating room for improvement. With Flux 1. Due to its British origin, the rendering leaned heavily toward European-style railway landscapes. Naturally, the thatched roof houses were omitted, and the AI showed no signs of familiarity with Japan's older eras. The formations ranged from reasonable to unusually long, some resembling mixed trains, showcasing diversity. Curiously, one scene depicted a person sitting directly on the tracks in front of the locomotive, engrossed in their smartphone. It seemed even the AI occasionally grapples with hallucinations. How about spells related to weather changes? To set the previous scene amidst a storm, I crafted the spell as follows. The sky is shrouded in dark clouds, and amidst heavy wind and rain, the mainline railway of 1950s Japan stretches across the vast lake. On the tracks, a large steam locomotive hauls a lengthy freight train of old two-axle wagons. The locomotive boldly releases clouds of smoke and steam, emphasizing its vigor. In the distance, snow-capped mountains are illuminated by flashes of lightning. At the foot of the mountains lies a tranquil rural village dotted with thatched roof farmhouses. With Image FX. Its natural rendering, as always, was exceptional. True to form, it maintained a fixation on Mount Fuji and Gasso-style houses, as well as its distinctive trait of adding headmarks to the train. With Grok. Though thatched roof houses appeared, they didn't evoke the essence of Japanese farmhouses. The direction and placement of smoke felt unnatural, hinting at unfamiliarity with railway conventions. Scenes where trains ran on semi-submerged tracks were frequent, seemingly influenced by an animated film. These surreal depictions bordered on chaotic. One train had thatched-style roofs on its passenger cars, and lightning struck as if targeting a passenger car. Meanwhile, the locomotive operated in reverse, a sight so comical it was hard not to laugh. With Microsoft Designer. Its artistic style was markedly distinct, emphasizing the dark mood of the storm effectively. It even featured pole-like objects reminiscent of fly swatters. With Flux 1. The drawings were less wild and conveyed a calmer atmosphere, though smoke still rose unnaturally from peculiar locations. These occurrences remained frequent. Now onto the usual spell related to the Shinkansen. In 1964, Japan's Shinkansen pioneered high-speed rail worldwide. The elegant, streamlined train, adorned with a white body and blue stripes, captured people's attention as it sped along at high speeds. With image FX, scenes frequently introduced in other videos were presented. With Grok. Initially, Grok's response suggested confusion. It seemed the spell had reached its input limit. Instead of disregarding the request, Grok appeared to mix it with the previous spell, producing bizarre imagery that reflected its enigmatic thought process. When the input limit was lifted, Grok delivered a significantly refined depiction. With Microsoft Designer. As expected, the design remained based on the 700 series, which seems to be a common choice for most AIs. However, the images became quite dynamic, featuring scenes like a judo athlete riding on the nose of the train's bonnet, or a sudden close-up of a woman. These hallucinations added variety and unpredictability to the results. With Flux One, the vehicles are somewhat similar, but their design could be interpreted as having a hint of Chinese influence. One wonders where this British-born AI, having moved to Germany, underwent its training. Curiously, none of the images in this series included headlights. Since all the AIs are of foreign origin, let's take this opportunity to test high-speed railways from overseas. Here's the modified spell. In 1981, following Japan's lead, France's TGV brought high-speed rail to life. The elegant, streamlined train, adorned with a red body and black and white stripes, captured people's attention as it sped along at remarkable speeds. With AGV influences, or perhaps mere hallucinations, the images occasionally featured passenger compartments even in the front car, though the designs were still somewhat believable. With Microsoft Designer, while the train's body colors were reflected in the output, the overall imagery did not align with the TGV's typical aesthetic. Some images even featured a gigantic human head, hinting at a significant amount of hallucination occurring. With Flux One, there was no hint of the early TGV design here either, suggesting a lack of serious training in railway-related subjects. After experimenting with various AI tools, it became clear that foreign AIs do not necessarily excel in creating European or American railway scenes. With Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion offers a mode where the AI can undergo training to create more accurate depictions of specific vehicles. While this allows for a certain degree of recreation for particular trains, it struggles to represent railway scenes teeming with a variety of vehicles. To produce railway images as diverse and occasionally amusing as those from ImageFX would require extensive training, far beyond what ordinary users could manage. When it comes to crafting railway landscapes, preferences might vary, but considering factors like the atmosphere of the images, the absence of donation requirements, and the lack of tedious procedures, ImageFX seems to stand out as the best option. For now, as it is still in a trial phase for data collection, ImageFX doesn't require donations. However, much like other services, it's unclear when that might change. For those who are not wealthy, despite the challenges of appeasing the AI's quirks, Stable Diffusion might be a safer choice in the long run due to the freedom it offers. The downside, however, is that summoning the AI requires a well-prepared PC with adequate capabilities. Users are faced with the dilemma of whether to invest in cloud services or their own PCs.